Welcome. Thank you for joining. This is Dirty Talk with Füsun and Lawrence. I'm Lawrence Winterman, joined by the lovely Füsun Iden and our very special guest, Samantha Paige. I'm going to be quiet now and let the two of you introduce yourselves. Samantha, would you like to go first?
Certainly. My name is Samantha Paige, and I write a Substack, Samantha Paige, she, they. Primarily, I guess it's memes and videos, but I do write a little bit, and I try to just be, I guess, an activist for our community, for the trans community.
Thanks, Samantha.
Thank you,
Füsun,
Samantha.
tell the people who you are.
My name's Füsun Aydin. I come from, I'm Turkish. I'm a trans woman. I have a Substack called Letters from a Prostitute. Pretty self-explanatory what I do for a living. And I'm also a trans woman.
And we wanted to do this episode today. So, folks who have watched Dirty Talk with Füsun and Lawrence before know that we talk pretty openly and unabashedly about sex. And, we answer questions and we, kind of tell the unvarnished truth. And there has been, we're living in a time where our trans siblings are under attack, and so much disinformation and misinformation, swirls about the trans community and what the trans experience is like and what it is about. We thought it was really important to have a bigger conversation. We call this one Trans 101, not to be reductionist, but just to say, this is an opportunity to elevate trans voices and an opportunity to ask questions. And we would love it if we could get respectful questions from the audience. Samantha has been so gracious in joining us kind of on short notice. And we think we might actually have another community member who's able to join us. We'll kind of keep my eye on the chat to see if he joins as well. And so, I wanted to just kick it off. My goal here as a cis gay man is to be an ally. I could maybe moderate, but I'm going to step back, and Trans Collective has just joined. So maybe in a minute or two, after we do some introductions, we'll just, or actually, Füsun, I'm okay if you boot me now. If you want to go ahead and invite Trans Collective, I will drop because I really want this to be about trans voices.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. I'll invite them.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I have to kick you first. Yeah.
You have to kick me out first. Yeah.
Okay.
I love you both. Thank you for doing
it.
Good to see you.
Bye.
Good to see you.
You too, Samantha.
It was really cruel. I don't like doing that. It was like I'm ejecting somebody from my life.
Yeah, right. He will be back. Sure.
Yeah, it's fine. It's connected. Okay. They're invited. It's pretty impromptu.
Yeah. I'm happy to be here, so it'll be fun.
Yes, me too.
Yay.
Hello.
Hey,
Happy Friday.
Hey, Friday.
happy Friday. Nice to
How are
meet you.
you?
Good, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good. And your pronouns are he, him?
Yes, they are. Yeah.
Okay. So, welcome to Dirty Talk. Usually this show is about sexual conversations, but as Lawrence explained, we wanted to dedicate an hour to talking about trans issues. Like we've called it Trans 101, but again, as Lawrence said, it's not to be reductionist. We want to talk about the trans experience and from both trans masc and trans feminine perspectives. And like recently, we've been seeing a lot of misinformation about trans people, a lot of really dangerous things that are affecting our lives on a daily basis. Trans people being physically removed from the toilets and changing rooms and the spaces they're entitled to use. Mm, And I would like to talk to you both a bit about how you're navigating this world, especially in the US, where it's becoming increasingly more dangerous to be a trans person. Um, so, yeah, tell me about what life is like as a trans person in the US. Would you like to go first, Samantha?
Sure. So I live in an area of the United States that's predominantly blue. My particular city is more purple, which is why I enjoy it. So I have certain parts of where I live specifically that I can encounter various um, levels of basic curiosity all the way up to actual animosity. So my lived experience, I guess, is simply one of a lot of worry and being aware of my surroundings. Um, I am constantly watched wherever I go. I walk into a Starbucks and people watch and look at me and stare at me. And I've become kind of unfortunately accustomed to that. But um, ultimately, I can say that where I live, when it comes to something like a bathroom, there are a number of gender neutral bathrooms here where I live. And so that choice, whether to use a women's restroom, a men's restroom, or a gender neutral bathroom, is still itself somewhat fraught because I still get watched for which one I select when there's an option. And when I ask to use a restroom, for example, I'm often told that the women's restroom is closed or being cleaned, and I don't have that as an option. Not that I would prefer, I mean, I personally, it's not this season for me for the women's restroom personally. So I don't necessarily, it'll happen, but it's not necessarily this season for me. So, but I do find it interesting watching the reactions I get when confronted with which bathroom I'm going to. Something as simple and so silly as where am I going to relieve myself is suddenly stared at with great interest, and that's kind of uncomfortable. But comparatively to some red states experiences, I don't know where you live. I didn't catch your name. I'm sorry. I know you publish under, but
Leo Caldwell.
Leo, nice to meet you, Leo. So I don't know where Leo lives, and that Leo's experience might obviously be very, very different. And I know that red state experiences are very, very different for people in our community. And of course, my heart goes out to them. So, um,
Yeah. Well, yeah. So I am in a red state, um, in a pretty Mike Pence's home state, so Indiana.
mhm.
So unfortunately, but I have a lot of passing privilege, not by choice, just by that's what happened. And it's a kind of double edged sword for me because I'm not really seen within the community so much. I pass so well that when I see other trans people, I go unnoticed. I've even been at trans conferences where people are like, "Are you trans?" And I'm like, "Yeah." But it does offer a lot of safety. And to your point, I wish I could go back to the women's restroom because the men's
Right?
restroom is so disgusting, and I miss the days when I could. We don't, as far as being in a red state, it's been pretty awful. I work in higher education as well, and we've been really silenced. I personally have been silenced. A lot of my things I put together for students have been shut down, and so it's. I'm actually recently looking into either moving to a blue state or moving out of the country because the red state has been so brutal. Our attorney general is targeting educators now, like has opened a portal to anonymously report educators. So
Mm,
it's been really difficult. Just because of the state and then being trans, obviously I grew up here, and so I came back here from a blue state, and growing up here was really difficult, but it is home, and so I'm very torn because I like rural places. I like the country, but the country isn't always safe. Not our country, United States, but you know cornfields and wide open spaces, but oftentimes that's a contradiction with my safety. And so the things I enjoy and love, oftentimes I feel I'm not safe there. And
mm.
and then in spaces like queer spaces, I often feel, and I've written a little bit about this, not seen, as queer. And so yeah, so it's like a weird. I feel pretty isolated. actually.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, thank you for that perspective. I'll continue.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, both of you.
Mhm.
My perspective is different. Obviously, you have an American perspective. I live in a country where it's relatively safe to be a trans person. There are the issues of toilets and changing rooms is becoming an ever harder topic in the Netherlands. But like, I grew up in an authoritarian country, though. I was born in Turkey. I lived there until I was 19 years old, where it is arguably, I mean, it is the most dangerous country in Europe to be trans, or in the European sphere, where to transition, it's almost impossible. You'll see very biased psychologists and psychiatrists who are appointed by the state. They're not independent. And to get access to the gender affirming care is really hard, and hormones is really hard. Mm, And I feel very privileged now to live in a country where I can get access to these things. But I do see kind of this rising, there's something in the air, there's something feels like it's changing. People are using terms like common sense, and using terms like a woman doesn't have a penis, or you know uh, you know things like that, like these kind of comments that are so pointed, and they're making their way into politics. These politicians have started picking up these phrases and saying, no, we need to return to common sense. A man is a man and a woman is a woman, and so I can see it coming, but I still don't think it would be anywhere near as bad as anything that I experienced in Turkey.
Mm.
But I still have a high sense of anxiety, because I see how far it can go. How this rhetoric and these attitudes can infect people, even people who were once rational, who were once open-minded individuals, are now saying things that trans women aren't women, and trans men aren't men, and non-binary people don't exist, and that kind of horrible things that is happening, and it is very saddening. It is very saddening. So I guess the question I'd like to ask you both is, what do people assume most about you as a trans person?
Hmm. Most often, and I'm sorry, Leo, I hope you don't mind if I jump in first. I think most people initially, when they meet me, and how much of this is also typical gender expression or affirming, so to speak, in a weird sort of way. But I think that I'm treated um, like a child. Like I couldn't possibly have made this decision rationally by knowing who I am. That I haven't been dealing with this internally and externally for my entire life. And they make this instant assumption, primarily because of the propaganda, that we're a new phenomenon, that I am sort of, I guess, treated with kid gloves, and treated where you just sort of patronize and just, whatever you say, sir, and that kind of interaction, when that's your first interaction with an individual, sets a table for an unequal conversation. I'm used to the fact that I haven't completed a thought when I'm talking to a man in a very long time, because they'll talk over me. No offense, Leo. But it's different to have that same interaction, while at the same time, and maybe this is something that cis women experience that I'm unaware of, but it doesn't seem from my trans woman experience looking in, they do get that sort of interaction. But at the same time, there's this added element of, you're a mental condition, and I need to watch out, because if I say the wrong thing, you're going to freak out in the middle of my store. And when the most likely thing that I would do if you were to accost me or something like that is probably leave. I just like, it's, thanks for your input, and then leave. because who wants to have that? But it's I'm I'm constantly, I think, treated with kid gloves that are unfair because I don't want those kid gloves, and I don't think that's fair to me. But also because I think they're just uncomfortable with maybe the whole experience, maybe, and so their reaction is to patronize. And any curiosity from that position tends to be uh, coded with some sort of, tell me when you lost your mind, right? And it's hard to have a shared experience or a lived experience, express my lived experience when it's immediately discounted, uh, just by virtue of, you know, a number of propagandist stanks, basically,
Which were all untrue,
Correct.
essentially, as well.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I understand that we're in, the gender dysphoria is in the DSM, but so was homosexuality for a long time, and we used to deal with problematic women with lobotomies, and we as a society have a tendency to sort of um, lump something new, I think, that we don't necessarily understand instantly as different than the norm. And how do you do that? You classify it as a condition, right? When in the fact, I think that we're all on a spectrum, and that there is no condition. It's just where you fall on the spectrum. But I'll shut up now. That's a lot. I'm sorry. I tried to over talk.
Yeah,
Leo?
I would say I get the unique perspective of seeing what people would treat me like not knowing I'm trans, and then coming out and seeing what they treat me like after they find out I'm trans. And I certainly want to validate your experience because what I've seen is, as a cis presenting white man, I walk into a room and my voice is heard. I'm respected. In fact, when I transitioned and started a new job, and I got promoted twice within 2 years. And I was like, as a woman, it took 4 or 5 years to get promoted once. So I want to validate that experience, and then also say once I come out as trans, my voice loses a lot of volume and it loses a lot to the
Mm,
crowd. I feel like I have to validate myself, defend myself. I feel like also I have to perform and present as good, as I'm working really hard. I'm not going to get angry. I'm calm, and so I think that that experience is very. I feel you on that. Again, I don't. I think it's like moving through the world as a cis white man. I've seen all the doors open, and honestly, it pisses me off,
mm,
to know, like, yeah, no, this is a real experience. Like, people are definitely treating cis white men much differently, as we all know statistically and have experienced. But yeah, so I end up having to come out a lot as trans, and when I do, and I always do, because it feels kind of icky to me as far as knowing that these people are treating me better because they think I'm not trans. So I want to know, how are you going to treat me knowing I'm trans? So I often come out pretty quickly to people. And I just think, it's oftentimes an experience of, I have to, like I just said, I feel like I have to be the best, most upstanding citizen because I represent trans people now to this group of people. Um, and yeah. And I think for them, the compliment always is, I didn't know you were trans. Oh, you passed. I didn't know. Recently in a faculty meeting, I spoke up about what was going on, mentioned being trans, and one of the other faculty didn't know I was trans, and he went to someone and was like, "I had no idea Leo was trans," and then that person came to me and was like, "He didn't know. Isn't that great?" And I'm like, "No, I know. I'm not. This is not something I'm trying to hide. It's not. I'm very proud to be trans." So, yeah, I resonate with some of your experience.
mm. Do you
Yeah,
mind?
me too.
I'm sorry, Wilson. Leo, I did want to follow up on one of those things. I completely agree with you under the fact that it seems that so few people have interacted with us. I guess I'm making some written assumptions, but I do feel a need to perform, to be the best trans woman that they will ever meet, because I could be the only trans woman they ever meet, and so I feel that places a lot of pressure and obligation on me. If I have a bad day, I beat myself up about that because of the fact that I feel like maybe someone witnessed that, and then now their impression of trans people is, look at that person, snapping at the gas station attendant. I don't know. I'm picking something random. And that's it's an enormous amount of responsibility to carry. So Leo, I certainly I can sympathize and completely feel that. And then I forgot, and I'm sorry. I did want to circle back to what you said in the queer community. Sometimes I have to admit I hang out in a queer bar where I will meet a gentleman and be surprised too that they're trans and that they have to tell me. And that has to be difficult because it does seem like you're an interloper in a queer space when you come in as a cis presenting man. And I'm sure that has some difficulties, but I'm glad that you put up with it because we need more, trans men obviously in a lot of,
We need a handshake. We need a handshake or a signal. Like this.
right? Because it used to seem in our community, you didn't want to out someone. If you clocked someone, you
Right.
didn't want to, so you couldn't say hi on the street.
Right.
And then that felt like I was sort of excluding myself from my own community in a way. So I don't do that anymore. Now I don't care if I clock you, I'm going to say hi. And I'm sorry if that makes you, hopefully it doesn't make you feel bad, but I think that connection's important.
Yes. Yeah, like I mean, there's so much I want to say about like I think if you're in any minority community, you are you represent that community, right? So like you are anything you do is more scrutinized than anybody else. As for like passing and that kind of um, a kind of culture of passing reminds me of something I saw a couple of weeks ago, where there was a trans mask in a bar, and this woman, she was really drunk. Cis woman was really drunk, and she was saying, "No, you're not trans. You're not trans. No, you're assigned male at birth," and all this stuff. And he literally had to lift up his top to show his top surgery scar and be like, "I'm a trans man," like that. And she's like, "Why can't you just take the compliment?" I'm thinking like, what are you even saying? Like, is me escaping my transness something to be ashamed of?
Right.
Is it something to be ashamed of? Like, for me, like, I don't care if I pass or not. Like, if I don't pass, like, I'm fine with that. Like, if people clock me and they're like, "Oh no, that's a trans woman," okay, it's fine. Like, what? I don't understand why we have this fascination with clocking trans people and being like, "That's a trans person. That's a trans person." Oh, I'd never guessed that person was trans. Like, it's like society as a whole is obsessed with trying to like clock trans people and subsequently out them, because in some scenarios there are trans people who don't want people to know they're trans, right? And want to fit in and want to assimilate into this kind of heteronormative situation, right? In society, that they want to live quietly, to be assumed to be cisgender. So like this whole coming out and saying somebody, "Oh, that person's trans," and outing them essentially can lead to really bad consequences. Like it could be dangerous for somebody to be outed as trans, right? So it's best not to just say anything. To be like, whether this person is trans or not, to be quiet about it. Like, don't shout to people. Don't talk about this person in the context of their transness to other people. Just leave it and just get on with your lives, right?
Mhm.
Because what difference does it make, really? Like, if you think about it, me being trans has no effect on anybody's life, So I think it's very toxic. We live in a world that's toxic that says when someone's trans, they have to have this big identifier over their head, so everybody knows that they're trans, and everybody can, navigate them how they want to navigate them, and have and it's just awkward. It's just really, really awkward having these conversations with people. But if someone talks to me as trans, I'm like, okay, I'm trans. Like, that's fine by me.
Right.
Fine.
Yeah.
Like, so yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, do you ever still get misgendered?
Um,
Leo specifically?
yeah, let's go with Leo's.
No, never.
No?
No.
Mm.
Samantha?
Well, let me just say one thing. If someone does it, they found out I was trans, and it's very much uh vindictive. Like, they have found out somehow I'm trans, and then they start saying, "Oh, and I'm like, that never happens until someone that's an asshole finds out
Right? They identify
they
it.
start calling me
Yeah.
she. I'm like, okay. So no, it never happens though. Yeah.
Mhm.
Samantha?
It depends on what aspect and where in my community I am. If and I do find, and this is kind of fun, that the younger people that I interact with are more likely to refer to me by my, you know, she, her pronouns, um, and not really question it, to just, treat me like a person and just go with it. Um, and then there are the microaggressions, which I get constantly, which are, a nice interaction with a cashier that will end with a dude or sir, just thrown in at the end, just so that I know that they know, you know. Um,
Mm.
and then there are the blatant, overt, look at him, when I walk into this store or something like that. So, and I hate using consumerism as my example, but unfortunately, that's how I interact with most people, is in store environments, grocery stores or the mall, or so I use that as an example a lot. But so I'd say mostly it is just microaggressions, but yeah, it happens quite often for me. But I
Yeah.
don't pass at all. So, and again, I'm not trying to. I'm proud to be trans, very, very proud to be a trans woman. So, I try to, present that way, so that people are sort of confronted with the experience, and they have to maybe examine some of their presuppositions. And I'm more than happy to examine them with them, but they tend to not want to do that with me. And that's
Yeah.
fine. Yeah.
Think like, yeah, I think there's a tendency though within trans people to overperform the stereotypes of their gender,
Mm, mm,
right? So notice that women will be very performatively feminine, and they'll emphasize femininity with the end goal of passing, right?
mhm,
Like, just if the more they emphasize it, the more they pass. That's in their head, right? And want to say that my experience with trans men, although in you know ashamedly is kind of rather limited, because I haven't had many experiences talking to trans men that I'm aware of, but like, see, that kind of could be something that happens within the trans mass community as well. Is that right, Leo?
Yes, yeah. I actually, early on in my transition, that's kind of what I struggled with. Is I felt very tied to my femininity, but I knew I wanted to transition, and I felt comfortable presenting as masked. And so I feel like in the last probably 5 to 7 years, I finally have embraced, because I transitioned like 17 years ago or so. And so initially I was like, I look back at my pictures and I was like, what was I wearing? Like, I was wearing like a suit and a tie, and you know what I mean? And just like wasn't myself at all. And so, and I talk to young trans guys now that I'm like, who are you? It's okay to be feminine and be a man. And I think that's the thing too, that trans people, to your point, we're like, well, we've got it, we're transitioning, so now we're going to be a man, like a man, and then that's not really like tied to our personalities. And so um I'm really grateful to be, older now, and also just settled in like what my masculinity looks like. And I think it's really good to have different versions of masculinity, femininity, like what does it even mean, and so to like mix it up and play with it. Um yeah, I'm really grateful, and I oftentimes come off as a gay man, so then I get to at least be in the queer community. Um,
Oh,
I,
that's
you know,
so.
I
Oh, my heart goes out to you. Yeah.
yeah, because I've never dated a man, and and so, but I'm like, most of the people that are attracted to me are men, and so I just pass as a gay man a lot of times, which again is like, that's my door into the community at least. I do want to tell a real quick funny story. I was at a gay bar once, and some gay guys were not letting me order a drink. And I was like trying to get in there, and they're like, "You're here with a woman." And I was like, "I'm trans." And they're like, "Oh, your eyebrows look too nice." So we thought something was up. So like, that's how shocked me, was that I had good eyebrows. And I just think it's, yeah, within the community, it's funny to the ways we try to figure people out.
Mm. And
It really
and
is.
I don't mean to interrupt you, Phil. So I identify as, a femme, I indicate in my bio that I'm trans femme, not trans woman, though I am a trans woman. But that's primarily because I sort of came out and came about in the 90s when within lesbian subculture, which is where I was, predominantly in that area at the time, when there was Stone Butch and High Femme. And those dynamics presented this sort of ideal of, uh, you know, a lesbian butch woman present masculine in some sort of way. And then the feminine version of a lesbian, lipstick lesbian now or chapstick lesbian now, was that high femme presentation. And so I carry that with me because that's who I am. I'm high femme, or at least, a femme. And so I get that you're presenting performative feminism a bit, as a reaction to who I am, both sexually and with my identity. I'm bisexual now, but back then it was lesbian culture that taught me who I was, so to speak. And so I get that notion that what I do femininity wise is reviewed as performative when it's actually um, not necessarily performative. It's actually who I am in the relationship dynamics I seek out in the world. And so it's odd to have the thing. I mean, I have that thing that I am used against me because I'm trans, first of all, but to have also how I present as trans and my femininity also critiqued is also an interesting subdynamic too.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Cindy has a question, and I think it's for you, Leo.
Good.
The question says, did you date a man before you transitioned?
No, I'm actually considered a gold star. I don't know if does anybody remember that term from way back? It's probably a terrible term now in the queer community, but there was like the gold star lesbian that's never been with a man or whatever. So, I actually never dated men. I did like in middle school, I tried to date boys in middle school and I immediately was like, ugh, I don't want to be with boys. And again, that's I am happy for all folks to have whatever sexuality. It's just never been my experience. I've always been attracted to femme, like just a femme presentation, and not a mask presentation. So no.
There is also something else I want to address. Someone in the audience asked why Corey had to shoot Charlie. And I suspect this person is not acting in good faith, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Let me make clear that Corey Robinson, that's his last name, right? Robinson?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. Corey Robinson was not a trans individual. He's cisgendered. And Corey Robinson, and even if Corey Robinson was a trans individual, that doesn't
Yeah.
excuse him from being a bad person. Trans people are not immune to being bad people. That's like trans people can do bad things independently of whether they're trans, because they're a human being and human beings make bad decisions, do bad things, do good things. Like we're held to a certain standard where we can never do anything wrong. It's unreasonable. Trans people are going to do things wrong. And as a matter of fact, like I'm going to say this, I don't give a fuck about Charlie Kirk. I don't care that he's dead. Like I'm sorry that it had to happen. I'm sorry that we're living in this political climate where things like this are happening. Political violence is a terrible thing. But does his death bring me any tears? No, not at all. That man made people's lives a misery. He targeted trans people. He targeted people of color. He targeted anybody that wasn't straight, white, and Christian and a man. That was the size of him. He was a shit stirrer, and he lived by the sword, and he died by the sword. It's as simple as that. Sorry, I just had to say that to get
No,
it out.
I'd like to follow that with, the funny thing is that I was unaware of who Charlie Kirk was generally and before the assassination. I have my algorithm. I built my algorithm, brick by brick, and Charlie Kirk's videos was not a part of my algorithm unless somebody did a stitch. And that was pretty much the only time I ever saw who he was. And so once he was, assassinated, and first of all, I strongly believe violence is never an option, especially politically, and it's a sign of a failing morality in my mind. But in a political environment, political killings. But I digress. And so I'm now learning what his stated positions are after the fact, and I think a lot of people are actually who maybe, were unaware of what his policy or his personal positions were. And maybe they're having some second thoughts, maybe about lionizing him as this saint. Maybe, I don't know. But it's interesting to have someone you've never heard of really, other than just sort of, yeah, he argues online like you, suddenly be elevated to this stature. It's crazy. And I don't argue anywhere near as well as he did. But he was a debater. That was his purpose. But I don't think he was intellectually honest from what I've seen in terms of some of his debate.
He certainly, but I mean, I think intellectually dishonest would be a light way of describing Lee Kirk. He was a grifter. He was an opportunist. And, he is canonized by the current administration because he is probably responsible for winning large sections of the young vote, the people that voted for Trump.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to canonize him because Trump probably wouldn't be where he is now in terms of the way he represents certain sections of young people without him. Like it's like he was, I think he was like Goebbels was to Hitler, but for young people, right? Like he was this propagandist, this kind of. So yeah, they're gonna canonize him and lift him up. But anyway, I just thought I would say that because that person's not acting in good faith. And honestly, if you're a trans person and you're operating online in any way, shape, or form, either you're on Substack or some other platform, people like this will generally drop a comment like this all the time. It's in bad faith. It's to draw you out. It's to elicit a reaction. It's them asking you to engage with them, and then they're gonna try and frame the argument a certain way. And don't ever engage with these people. But this is what trans people experience online all the time. It's a wasteland where people can be anonymous. They can do whatever they want. They can say whatever they want. And I think trans people get hit the hardest right now by these kind of people. I mean, some of the things that people have said to me online has been unbelievably terrible. Just unbelievable. It's the things that they say, the most common thing is being called a child groomer. That's like the most common the common insult that I get. I get called a child groomer, I get called a child mutilator, and things like that. But if you're a trans person in an online space, you're gonna get this if you're living openly as trans online. That's the climate that we live in, and it's really unfortunate. I'm just wondering whether Lawrence has a question. What advice do the three of you have for parents of kids who are on a gender journey? So let's go with Samantha first.
Wow. Okay. So my experience, I'm not a trans parent. I am a parent, but I'm not a trans parent. So my experience is only my lived experience. And as a child who came to a realization very early that this was not, the way I was born was not the way I was supposed to be. I tried to express that to my parents as best that I could. And a lot of this is, so far in my past, it's vague, except for certain things that do stand out. And those were the times that my parents strongly tried to change my mind. And those memories stick. Um, and So I guess, I mean, in a perfect world, if there was a perfect world, we'd all be free, along with sex ed in school, for example, however that may be framed or look, would be an exploration of gender. And it would be an allowance for people time to explore that so that they could maybe try it on, see if it fits for them. And given it statistically how many of us there are, a enormous number of the children who may have that exploration during pre-puberty in sex ed classes will end up being cis. But they may have a greater appreciation of what it means to be trans, and that So that's a benefit. But I wish that we as a society would allow the free exploration of it, because I think children, um, I know that it caused me a lot of pain and difficulty by having the people I look to for safety and security deny who I am, and flat out tell me that I cannot say that or do that because it embarrasses them, and because it's not who you are. And to have that reinforced throughout my childhood, uh, I will probably, I mean, it may be, correlation over cause, but it did make it difficult for some relationships in high school, and some disassociation, I guess, with who I am. And I'm thankful that I got lucky enough to be in the punk and new wave scene, so I could, wear eyeliner and could dye my hair and wear clothing that was more gender appropriate to who I was within the confines of what my parents said. No, you're a dude. You have to, you know, do this. But of course, I also, I grew up in the '70s, so it's a completely different time. So, and I don't know what it's like for children today. I know from my teenage children, um, especially my youngest, that the trans identity and gender were discussed within the school environment, and I appreciated that, especially because he was being exposed to what I hoped, or hope we all will at some point be allowed to explore and find our own place on that spectrum without fear of, other people judging us or beating us up.
I've had the opportunity to speak to trans youth, and a lot of parents of trans kids have reached out to me online, and I mean, I would just say the data shows if you don't support your trans kid, they are at higher risk of suicide, like much higher risk. So the first step is supporting them in their journey. I think in the states it's really difficult right now to find care. And some states they can find care, in some states they won't be able to find care. So I think I have a lot of empathy for parents of trans kids right now as they navigate where can I get the support my child needs, especially if you're in a red state. So I would work with other parents, reach out to people online to try to find that support, because every trans kid, their experience is different, and I think one of the misconceptions, especially here in the states, is that there are trans kids transitioning at alarming rates. There's not. Actually, I do a post and it shows like there was a study done with 5 million youth, from it was pulled from health insurance, and it was like less than 1%. I think it was even less than, it's like 0.1%, I believe. I don't know the exact data, but it's definitely less than 1% of trans or of youth are receiving any sort of gender affirming hormones. So this is not a huge movement, and it's very difficult to access care. And so I think for parents, ensuring that the kids get the care that they need, it's again specific to the child, and not everybody's journey is the same. Some involves medical intervention, some doesn't. You know, I just think that finding that support for your child, but being that support,
Yeah.
because especially in the country the way it is, if you are not supporting your trans child, I can't imagine. It brings me to tears because I've seen those kids where their parents don't support them and they are not well.
Yeah. We exist. I mean, if I have to say it over again and over again, I will. We exist. We are a people. We're not a mental illness. We're not a groomer society. We're not trying to mutilate kids. We are trans. We exist. And trans kids exist. I was one. You were one. We were all one. And so this idea that that trans kids would be better off without trans representation in their life, seeing that they can have a future, seeing that they can hold a career or go to school, or get married, whatever it might be, is very important. And and this notion that we're out to take cis kids and make them trans, or gay kids and make them trans, to me, just completely annihilates the idea that we are a people. We're not out after cis kids or gay kids. We want to look out for trans kids, the people who, will go through those difficult times if they don't have an adequate representation, or at least someone to show them life is possible. Because if their closest family unit is telling them they're not trans, or that they're crazy, or that we need to get you to a therapist to straighten you out, that child will have issues, because we are a people. We're not something that can be cured. So, anyway, I'll get off my soapbox. I'm so sorry.
It's 100%. It's 100%. Like, stop treating trans people as if it's a disease
Mm-hmm.
or a condition, and yeah, like it needs to be cured.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I'm thinking from my own experience, I don't see anything more important than parents supporting their children. I didn't have that support when I was 15. My mother kicked me out of my home in Istanbul,
Mm-hmm.
and subsequently, my life has probably been made tenfold harder than what it should have been. All because she didn't want to hear me out. She didn't want to understand. She didn't want to. She just didn't want to know. She heard it. He rejected it, and I was gone. And I lost my whole family for a number of years because just because of who I was. So for me, I think parents, even if they don't understand what being trans is, they need to try to understand. They
Mm-hmm.
need to put the time and the effort in to realize what being trans actually is and what it means to their child to be trans. And see if they're happy, and see their happiness, and think to themselves, if this child is happy, how can this be a bad thing? Does
Right.
this make sense? How can it be a bad thing? My child is comfortable. My child is so comfortable now that they're excelling academically. They're holding down a stable job.
Making
They've got good relationships with people. They've got good friendships. Their life is, it's structured and pardon the phrase, but it's normal. They're living a normal life and they're happy and contented. Like, see that and be like, this cannot be a bad thing. And imagine your child, sorry, ignoring who they were and and not coming out and suppressing who they were inside. And imagine the difficulty they would have in life, and see the difference. You could have one child who's happy and contented and leading a normal life, or you could have a child who is miserable, who is, I hate to say this, who is attempting suicide on a regular basis, is self-harming, is using drugs and alcohol, and has become
yeah.
dependent on it, and is living a miserable existence. Just put yourself in that position and see both avenues, and see where one avenue leads and where the other avenue leads. And honestly, if you still don't want your child to transition after that, quite frankly, you're a piece of shit. If you want to subject your child to a life of misery for your own ego and for your own political, or i.e. religious views, if you want to make your child suffer because you believe religiously is wrong or politically is wrong, you're a bad parent and you're a piece of shit. Listen to your child. Accept your child as who you are, even if you don't like it. Accept it, and don't be mean, cruel, and unnecessarily sadistic to your child. Just listen to them. Get
Yeah.
them what they need. Understand what they need. Yes,
I think
that's
that
it.
especially for a child who just maybe comes out to a parent, they're I would caution against maybe jumping the gun there. I know that treatment for children requires a demonstrated and consistent pattern of presentation for who they're saying that they are. And I don't think there's anything wrong with just sort of going along with the child at the beginning to let them express themselves, and see if after a month or two they still want to express themselves that way. Now, that doesn't mean that they're not trans. There may be social pressures outside of that the parents are unaware of that are forcing them to want to change. But but it just the freedom to allow them to present and be treated how they wish, and see how long, uh, I just wish my father or mother as a child. I got disowned by my father, but I wish that they had just said, "Sounds good to us," once.
Yeah. Well, and also I want to say, a lot of people are like trans people are mentally ill. We do experience higher rates of mental illness because of the way society treats us, because of the lack of access to care, because of the lack of the things we need, the resources we need. It's not because we're just inherently mentally ill. It's because of the
Mhm.
experiences we've had with family, with this, with society, with our friends, with unsupportive parents. And so to your point, like your child can go down that path and suffer, or it can, you can have a supportive system around your child and have a better, they'll have a better mental health outlook. Um, with the way the world is, you really like again, the mental health outlook is going to be a difficult one no matter what.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
I you know I socially transitioned years ago and medically transitioned within the last year, or began my medical transition within the last year. But um, I think some parents have a fear that the child might have a life based on our political environment now, very difficult if they're trans, and so that might be one of the factors that parents have to deal with. And in a way, to yes, society is not very pleasant to us right now. Politically, it's downright dangerous. But I am entirely more at home in myself and happier in myself and building community as myself, and not some suit I would wear. And that, despite all of the negative reinforcement from outside, um, is the best thing that has ever happened to me. And so, for parents who might fear, yes, your child's life might be difficult, but they're going to find community. They're going to find a home. They're going to find love. They're going to find jobs. All of it's going to happen. Hopefully, given that unless things change and we're in a camp next week. But so that fear may be irrational, but it may not be completely irrational given our political environment. And hopefully that changes so that that fear can be completely put aside. In a perfect world, there would be no ramifications for being trans, right? It would just be like a tall girl or a trans man, and like they're just another man, right? And when men aren't all the same and women aren't all the same, and there's a lot of um, diversity within those gendered roles anyway. Just you can look at the trad wife versus the stereotypical girl boss, right? I don't necessarily think that family is inconsistent in either one of those frames, um, but there's different ways of classifying cis women, and I love it if one day I'm going to keep trans, even if I tomorrow the magic wand, boom, you're a woman by society standards. I would still keep trans because I'm proud of being trans, but I really wish that they would understand that trans men are men and that trans women are just a variation. I have a penis, but I'm a woman. Does that make sense? No, but it's not common sense, but it's my life experience and my lived experience, and not I'm not the only one telling society that we have this lived experience. It's sure, you can say insanity, but with 2.8 million people telling you the same thing, at what point do you go, maybe insanity is not the right model? Maybe we should listen to these people, um, and that would be wonderful. I'd love our community be able to define itself through our community rather than from the eyes of outside observers who probably don't like us to begin with.
I agree, but I don't see anything as I don't see my transness as a mental illness. I think to kind of relate to what Leo said, see that I have mental illnesses because of my transness, not like the transness in itself is not a mental illness. It's what is happened. I would get rid of those in a second, like I would like to live free of mental health issues and kind of lead a normal life. But I don't think with the current state of the world, the way society is, I think trans people being more visible now in the long run will be better.
Mhm.
You know, when it took gays and lesbians, for example, and bisexuals a long time, like hundreds of years, to be accepted as um, as valid human beings, you know, with who can love and who can hold relationships and live normal lives, right? Because being homosexual was in the DSM until what, 1972 or
Yeah,
1974, something like that.
I believe
That's
so.
not a long time ago. Like, it's not a long time ago. So, like, I think the more visible we are and the more we talk and the more conversations we have and the more we're in society and the less we shut ourselves away, the more people become acclimatized to us and the more people will accept us
Mhm.
eventually. But it won't be an overnight thing. It'll be more gradual and years. And for that to happen, for this acceptance to happen, we have to make trans kids not scared to come out.
Mhm.
Because if their trans kids are scared to come out, there's gonna be no acclimatization. There's gonna be no normalization. You know,
Right.
it'll be just every so often you'll see a trans woman on the street and somebody will say, "Oh, that's a trans woman."
Mhm.
You know, like and make all of the assumptions. Mm, I'm gonna ask one last question before we wrap up. It's from Lawrence. And Lawrence has a question for both of you. He asks, how are you finding living in the US as trans people? And do you have plans to leave?
Mhm.
Yeah, so I actually didn't make a remark on Charlie Kirk because that is what our state attorney general is using to attack educators. Someone at my place of employment lost their job for a really benign comment about Charlie Kirk. So I've been pretty much silenced in the state of Indiana about certain subjects. Um, and I get concerned about physical safety here. So I have been looking into moving and not sure where. I'm not sure if moving in the States. I just don't know if I want to stay in the States if I'm going to invest financially.
Yeah.
And I feel like I should try to leave. The last week has made me really want to leave. I've been thinking about it, but watching people I work with get fired, being silenced, even being on this feed right now, I'm concerned about what this will do for me, especially sharing the information I've shared. Um, it could have actual material impact on my life, and so yes, I'm considering leaving.
Thank you for being here, Leo. Really,
Yeah, thank you.
I lived in Maryville, Indiana, for a number of years while I was working in Chicago. So I'm kind of familiar with Northwest Indiana, at least. And so I realize, how downstate Indiana. I don't know where you are in Indiana, but is certainly a different environment than Chicago or here. Um, I can't leave the U.S. I don't want to. I'm a third generation military. I myself am a veteran. This is my country, and I'm staying. And if my country wants to put me to death or put me in prison or put me in a mental institution, I will fight against it every legal way that I can. Uh, but I'm not leaving. You're stuck with me. uh, but I am, safer in this blue state that I live in, for sure. And I remember when grunge happened. I was in college in Seattle, and they called it a brain drain. Everyone wanted to move to Seattle, and Seattle benefited from that. Extremely, just increases to the tax base, but also bright people coming in and getting jobs, and we're and I envision a trans brain drain to the coasts, to at least California and maybe Washington and Oregon. I know that San Francisco has a trans district. My dream is to try and do something like that here in Portland that will allow trans people to live together and perform, have stores and display art or whatever they display, and hopefully bring tourists in so that they could meet us. But at the same time, also part of me is like, do I really want to group us all in one place to make it easier for the state to come and get us? But I would love to see more people come to Portland, more trans people come to Portland. There is already a trans culture here. When I was growing up, like I said, in Seattle, going to college, it was lesbian culture, but there was no trans culture that I was able to find back in the early 90s. And so now, living in a place with an actual trans culture, where you can go to different restaurants and have it be a trans environment, not just a queer environment, or not just a gay environment. Though we're all part of the same thing, it's nice to be in a culture that has that. And I look forward to trans artists and writers and the perspectives that they could, as a person who's very much into visual art, I know there are a lot of creative trans people, and I really I enjoy seeing the artistic expression of what life is like for us. I can't leave. They're going to treat me how they treat me. I love this country. I'm not going to leave. I wish
Very
that
brave.
yeah. I don't think that's brave. It may be stupid. But what's the saying? I regret that I have one life to live for my country and for my community. But anyway, so it's going to get better. There is no choice for me. It's going to get better. We hold the line at where the pejorative aspect of who we are as society. We hold this line for the trans kids of the future. We only go up from here, and that's my goal. But I certainly respect those who feel unsafe. I don't think there's anything though more terrifying than to be unsafe in your community or home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm actually a refugee.
Mm-hmm.
I left my country as a refugee.
Mm-hmm.
Claimed asylum in the Netherlands, and because it got to a point where I realized if I stay here, I'm going to die.
Yeah.
Someone will kill me. It's inevitable. I think, and I hope to God this never happens in the United States where it becomes a culture like this, but the hatred in Turkey was palpable.
Mm-hmm.
It was everywhere you went, and it's nice to think, for me, it's nice to I hold on to this change, I hold on to that it will change eventually. Is everybody still there, or have we lost people?
I think we lost Leo.
Okay.
I think I saw something that said his internet connection was unstable or something.
Right. We're gonna wrap up anyway.
Yeah, of course. Bye,
So-
Leo. Pleasure. Hopefully I'll get to see you again or talk to you again. It was a pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, sorry, Leo. Sorry you got disconnected, but it was really great having you both on the show. I really appreciate it. I know Lawrence really appreciates it.
Mhm.
And it's been quite a productive chat, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. And and I remember when you went back to Turkey, and you were within this year, I believe, and you were posting photographs of the protests that were going on and what was going on there. I was glued to each of your posts. They were wonderful, and I thought it was so interesting. And I applaud you. I mean, it was not safe for you to be there and to be doing that. And so I appreciate that you did. And I certainly worry about Leo. Hopefully he has no negative ramifications for.
Yeah, I'm gonna invite him again just so we can say goodbye.
Sure.
I feel bad. I'm
Mm.
gonna invite him. Oh,
Yay.
Leo, I invited you just to say goodbye, and thank you so much for being on the show. Me and Lawrence both appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for hosting.
It's okay. I hope to see you soon.
Yes, thank you.
And thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for being here. Lots of love.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. You're welcome anytime.
Bye-bye.